That go okay for you?
Yeah, that was good. That was
No,
a really
really good.
interesting discussion as
Yeah.
well.
It's good. It feels like therapy doing these.
Yeah.
It's a little bit into.
I definitely want some direct feedback that I can pass back to Airmeet. But from my perspective, I've really enjoyed hosting the event on this platform. It's the first time I've done it, which will surprise you because it looks like I'm a complete pro. But it's the first time, so it shows you how easy this platform is. So definitely consider checking it out.
We're about to announce our next event next week, so I can show you just for some feedback on how we're structuring the different ticket classes between the virtual attendees and the physical. Yeah, and so these prices aren't indicative, but they'll be going up as it gets closer to the event. But I'm just sharing this with you more so that you can see how we're looking to have the different tiers of attendance. So, and that's we've got obviously a number of different type of tickets, so each one will have different.
Mike, it looks like you're round about that 2.5 times figure that it sounds like both Ross and I stumbled upon, and we suggested to Iris when I was helping her with her hybrid event. But that seems to be quite a comfortable. I wonder if that's the natural figure that we're kind of landing on across the industry. Is that there's got to be value for physical event. It's got to be different from virtual, but there's got to be a clear value proposition for both of them.
Yeah, and I think really you've got to think about your sponsors' capital value as well from the event, and when you can legitimately cover any overheads for a virtual attendee, you can literally price the ticket, with a 5% margin or even lower, and it's never going to hurt the event because as long as you've covered your costs and you're just driving more numbers to the event, which all of the sponsors, of course, love.
Quick question, Mike, if I don't mind interrupting. When you got ticket prices, at 7, 20, 30 euros, how much effort are you putting into giving that virtual attendee an experience? Because the expectations should be quite low at that price point. So what are you trying to really deliver them on the day? Because, when I'm trying to deliver a virtual attendee to get a 199 ticket, or I know there's people that are having virtual tickets at 499, there seems to be a lot of pressure into what you got to give the attendee for that 499. Like, what are you trying to give them for that price point?
For the next event, we've chosen sort of 3 different virtual tiers. The basic tier and the lowest price point is purely access to the stages, the expo sessions, without any networking. Next price point up, we throw in the networking element so they can actually meet with other delegates. And then the highest bracket on the virtual side is where we have a dedicated stage and we have a 10-minute presentation slot, and the price is reflective of that added benefit. And we throw in after recordings from their presentation, branded recordings, etc., etc.
I think that's a really good question, Ross. And if it's a rhetorical one, how much effort do you put in for a ticket price that's not going to make you the revenue that you were making at the physical event? I think it's something that we're really going to think about as we move into this hybrid world, for sure. Great. I think it's a really good idea to do a little test event. One of the really good things I like about a platform like Airmeet is actually, if you're only paying 50 cents per person, there's no problem with you running a 2-hour test event a week before, and maybe it costs you a few $100 or up to, let's say, $1,000. But if you've got everyone on there and they're going through that process, that's a great way to onboard. And if you want them to connect with people and do the networking, the best way to do that is to show them how it's done, so they come onto the platform with a clear understanding. So definitely for me, I'm pulling out this need to onboard this need to get them on to the platform early, either a test event or a little bit early. I really like Avinka's point about getting them onto the platform, but doing something different, something social, something fun, and then they can lead that on to the more kind of serious stuff. So they're really, really good ideas. Great. A question I've got for you, Avinka, is around the exchange part of the connections, the buyer and the seller. Have you got any thoughts about how you make that work? Because that's different from the attendee to attendee. How can we make sure that the connections between buyer or seller are done really well in the virtual space?
In this case, of course, it's important which platform you're using, because the platforms which has this matchmaking helps a lot, because when the people actually put their interests and what they're looking for, that the platform would help with that. So one bit the other thing, for example, what we improved is to put more detailed attendee lists. So for us, yes, that's the case where our audience is quite divided to the vendors and buyers, and the vendors are chasing the buyers. So to have this detailed attendee list where they can search for the particular companies, for the particular vendor categories or job titles, it helps them to find the right people and network with them. And allocating time for that as well in the agenda, that's another thing, because it depends, of course, of the numbers. If you have thousands of attendees, then you might have that networking bit through the whole conference. But how it's done, for example, today, I think it's good to make sure that you have those, and you can name them as you want. If you want to name them buyers and sellers meetings, so actually give the idea what we are going to do for the next 15-20 minutes, then do it.
I agree. We're hopping the platform that you stuck with right from the start and taking it through, and how easy was that a decision? Because you must have been looking at other platforms through that process.
It was easy, and Shirley makes a good point. Pricing was key for us. I mean, we had committed a lot of revenue and capital commitments into Hotel. So in all honesty, we were a little bit handcuffed with the amount of capital we wanted to spend on a virtual platform going into it. So our choices were many, but the financial choices were quite a few. Hop-in was quite a simple choice for us and enabled us to do something quick and easy. Would we have looked at other more the meeting play, I think, came into marketplace, and that was a really good option for us potentially, but it outpriced ourselves out the marketplace. So we kept on Hop-in as a good low-level entry, low-cost solution for us, William.
Ray, you were kind of looking for a platform round about that time. Did you notice this swing from the platforms demanding everything, it was all on their terms, and then kind of flipping a little bit more when more of the platforms came into the marketplace?
Well, after the experience with VFairs, we set out to have something which we could self-manage. We didn't want a third party. We didn't want a project manager getting involved, because we knew the industry was overloaded. We knew that we were going to be light on what we expected. So we looked specifically for something where we could access the back end, but still build out that conference center, so to say, which is what we were looking for. And we looked at a couple. We looked at Hexafair and a couple of others, and they still wanted to push you into this single event, 15 grand per event, single event, project managed, and we just said push back and went no. So we specifically then set out to find something where we would project manage, we would build, we'd have technical support, we'd have training at the outset, but we knew we'd be doing this for quite some time. So to make it more cost effective, and I don't mind sharing what we've spent. I mean, the license that we have and the webcasting package we had came to 50,000 sterling, but that's enabled us between now and license end, which is in May, and we're stretching out that far. We're doing an event the day before the license expires and not doing it on demand and just putting the content on YouTube. So it works out we're spending about 5.5 grand per event. Now, when you think that we've got 15, 20 exhibitors per event, our yield is pretty good in comparison. for each event, and it's allowed us to chip away at debt that we'd accumulated as well. Because you don't just look at the value of what you're buying to deliver; you're also trying to chip away at the debt you've accumulated, or the downfall in revenue income that you've suffered as a result of the initial COVID impact on your business.
So you were able to invest that long term because you knew you were with the platform. Shirley, you've got a different perspective, a bit similar to myself. You've got clients to serve. So how do you look at a platform and decide how much you have to invest in getting on top of that platform, knowing how it works, knowing that and the next client could say, oh, I'm not using Feedloop, I want to use something else. It's a different approach when you're running other people's events, isn't it? How did you feel about that kind of short-term to long-term commitment to really get on top of a platform?
Yeah, and I think also some of our clients are not for profit, so trying to explain to them that they had to take out an annual license, for example, going to cost them 900 or 1,000 or 1,200 just to run their webinars. They were like, "What?" So it had to. One platform that we did go with actually was Crowdcast, and we've actually been able to run webinars on behalf of clients, but using the same account. So it's us that then has the license, and we can then just cross charge, which actually made it much more feasible and affordable for our clients. But yeah, it's a massive thing. And again, like you were saying, Ross, with the money that we had anticipated receiving for the physical event that then got pushed forward to the next year, suddenly then you've got to, what you would like to spend on the virtual platform is not as big as you would like to, because you don't have the resources there, because you've already spent money on the venue with your deposits and stuff. So it is a tricky one to balance.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. That worked. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So content has now become a very central thing for creating an experience in events, because I feel, of course, we keep talking about it and calling it the Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
So we now have to think of creative ways to create content, because even that is what we are advertising for people to come into the event. So if it's creative, if it shows that it's encompassing and it's not just top-down kind of content where we're engaging attendees, I think there's prospects for us to have more rich engagement with our audience if they come on board to listen to us.
And what type of events is it that you're delivering?
We have been doing conferencing and exhibitions. So that's what we've had now to go into virtual platforms. But now we've also changed our business model, and we are now also offering virtual tech support to our clients, especially those who've been doing webinars. And we have been watching a few of those and feeling they've not been very effective. So we are offering, for example, like this platform, Airmeet, where you can have more other networking, for example, rich connections and things like that. So it's not just one element. We are also doing the virtual tech behind the scenes to support people like you who are speaking like now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you feel that the content has to be more produced? Or do you think people are okay with the quality that's being put out there?
It has to be. It has to be. I think if these platforms end up in a way that it can be a DIY kind of model, I think it would help a lot. But as it is right now, it's somewhat a small TV production, because there's so many moving parts that you can't just do it alone. So I think this is where production comes in to raise the quality of the content.
Yeah.
Once we're settled on technologies and platforms, and that's a challenge for me because everybody wants to supply me, but like once we're settled on those technologies, just like StreamYard, we can bring speakers in from anywhere, from any background, and we can spin those up quickly by, digital marketing is there. We've got audience databases. If for tomorrow we all decided that we wanted to put on a virtual event, 24 hours is probably too short, but within weeks, we could do that. Physically, that would be really challenging, not only to get the buy-in from people, but to sort the venue out and the build and all that kind of stuff. This really gives us an opportunity as event organisers to move at speed to the market needs at that moment in time.
That's a really interesting point. But as far as virtual events are going, I think we've seen a market become mainstream very, very quickly, and I don't think it's going to diminish much once we go back to physical.
Do you all think that as an events industry, this has been a slightly loaded question? Do you feel this has been like the shot in the arm that the industry needed to be much more aware of technology, but also digitalization? Or do you think we were absolutely fine and we were where we should have been?
I do think it has been a shot in the arm. I think, as we've said here, these technologies are not that new. There are plenty of events that were doing hybrid very successfully in different ways. We've been talking about 365 engagement for many years. So I think it was a shot in the arm. We weren't the digitized industry. On the other hand, I think that we need to be a bit careful about making too many assumptions about what the future will hold. So I do think virtual events will have their place. I think hybrid events will be pretty mainstream. But I also know that coming out, the sort of talk coming out of China is that a lot of virtual events that happened this year or during their lockdown have just disappeared, because actually once you go back to live, people want that pinnacle experience. They want the human connection. So I'm not trying to say that virtual events will go away, because I think they'll have their place for specific communities and also specific types of events or content that, frankly, people will say, well, I don't need to travel to that event. It wasn't that good anyway. I might as well do that online. But I think there'll be sort of a grading of experiences, or a tiering, if you like, where you still have these pinnacle live experiences where people want to be together. And, to just give an example, in our industry, PCMA, Convening Leaders, is obviously taking place kind of online / hybrid hub model in January. And usually that's a 5,000 person event in the States. And it's an exciting event, which I'd look forward to. And I'll take part online, but I'm really not that excited about PCMA online in January. And so I think, it's just that point, really, that at the beginning it was a novelty. There was a captive audience. As we become less of a captive audience, we really have to think about the purpose of each type of event, both online and in person, and really scope that so it's the right kind of channel for the right event, I suppose.
Well, for me, the way I see it is, for every one person that comes to a physical event, there's another person that can't come for one reason or another who would like to be there. So I think if there is an opportunity to monetize and do something in a hybrid fashion, I fancy you're going to audience match at least, one, if not one, 2 times what you're getting physically with a virtual audience. I think what you don't want to do, though, is have people who do like it going to the physical event still saying, oh, well, I'll just do virtual instead. You still want to bring people in. So I think we're going to have to up our game in terms of the physical experience. I think I'm going to sit back and watch other people and jump on the WhatsApp group and listen to their pains and their pleasures. And they say creativity is best, but the plagiarism's quicker.
When you've created all of this content, how are you actually repurposing it in terms of the editing, the uploading, the hosting? How is that process taking place?
Well, largely it's having to occur, and this is, again, some of it's determined by the system that we're using, but it's already there. So for us, we're pre-recording 20-minute talks, and we're doing some post-production to that. So we're adding pre-roll adverts from some of our sponsors. We're adding a generic introduction that I do as a kind of a moderator equivalent there. We're adding surrounds to the screen that overlays that have the sponsor logos. So we're doing that anyway. So we have our talks pre-recorded, and then we upload them to Hey Summit. And then at that point in time, that one of the advantages of Hey Summit as a platform, but I'm sure this is possible via the other means as well, is that there is ready to go, right? So there's no okay, I've recorded 10 hours of content and I then need to like cut that up into the various different bits from that stream that was our stage equivalent, we've already got it. Like, it already exists. So all you're then doing is kind of going, well, here is a window when it's live, and that video asset is still that video asset. And, you know, and I think that helps, right? Because it's like genuinely the only difference between the live and the like evergreen is the appearance when you're watching it. So it's almost becomes a bit more like iPlayer. So we have iPlayer in the UK, or which is similar to which is a bit different from Netflix, but like iPlayer would be you can watch it live on the BBC, the broadcaster in the UK, and then that same show in the same format is then just available on demand afterwards via the online system. And that's kind of almost the way that we're doing it, is that like actually in most cases very little content needs to genuinely be live. It might be easy to produce if you record it live, but certainly like the viewing of it doesn't need to necessarily be live on that. So there's not like crazy post-production that we're doing for the evergreen that we wouldn't be doing anyway. So maybe that helps us, because we're not doing any more work really. It's almost like a tick box that we're then just doing to kind of go, okay, well, there's a ticket that has year-round access. And, you know, obviously the platform choices you make are kind of complex for a variety of different reasons.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Kelvin. We've got absolute loads from that. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. So
I hope it was useful. Yeah. I hope